Oh, look how little. Look at how Angela. Oh,
I know. We are live. I know. And we're normally sitting in 3 different windows.
And we're all here together.
Hi, everybody in Wonderland.
Wherever Wonderland is.
I know, we don't know.
Yeah, we're coming to you live from the Midwest African American Genealogy Institute in the lovely oasis known as Fort Wayne, Indiana. We are exhausted.
All 3 of us are tired.
My feet are swollen.
They are? Oh no. They are. I can attest to the fact that her feet are actually swelling. What is the institute?
The Maggie Institute, the Midwest African American Genealogy Institute. What is it?
Well, okay. We're breaking down walls, right? These are people who may not. I mean, we're trying to encourage them to, as to why they should come to conferences. So, the non-sales pitch version of think of one reason why somebody would want to be here.
Well, I think this is an opportunity to bond with your presenters and bond with your colleagues, your fellow participants, in a different way. At a conference, you go to a session maybe on DNA. After that, you go to a session on free people of color in New England. After that, you may go to a session on researching Civil War soldiers. 3 very distinct, unrelated topics. At an institute, you take one area of focus, and for 3 days, 4 times a day, that's 12 classes, all related to that one concentrated or focused topic. And you have a chance not only to ask questions, but you're given assignments and you get guided instruction. This is not a conference. It's very intense, very personalized, and something that could, for many of our participants, change the trajectory of their research.
I'm going to give you some more space.
And the other thing is, and like you said, it changes their directory. They're also picking up new strategies and skills and tools how to conduct their research and enhance their research. So you have exercises and drills, at least in the track 1.
There are drills.
And there's drills in the other tracks. And we can speak about what those drills are. I don't know what our time is. And it's interesting to see that a lot of times the students are realizing that what they have is actually giving them more information than what they saw.
That's right.
And sometimes people have documents for 2 and 3 years and they never analyzed it, but they know they got it, but they didn't see what was in it. Do I have time to share a brief story?
Well, this is why we're here.
I want to share a story. One of the participants has a handwritten obit. And we don't know if the obituary was being read at the funeral. We don't know. It was, the person died in 1933. The person was born in 1876. And the person, it starts out about, this is the obit for this gentleman. And it says, I was born in North Carolina, gives a location, and gives a birth date. And again, it's handwritten. And it also says, and his wife, and names her Mrs. Jenny, whatever, Bryant. And of this union were 2 children. And they lived happily together. But what's interesting is, in the obit, they're telling the family that he wants her to take good care of the 2 kids, and that he's also survived by 2 sisters, and also survived by a nephew and a host of relatives. So the class was breaking down, look, we got a birth record, we got a marriage record, because it also gave location, and we also had the death record, and we also had the will. because of the statement that he was saying was,
yes.
gave
Provide
indication
for my
to
two
provide for my
Yes.
two children.
Yes.
And this was
Let's
one
screen check every month.
graph.
The sick chronic illness month. Like, what is wrong with people? What is, I said, I'm like, you're getting sick of this.
Sorry, people, somebody's
Oh
connecting
no, I don't know what happened.
But guess what? Like I said, you can fucking government check too, motherfucker. Like, she actually has legit.
Oh
in.
no,
Who is that?
that I think that's what
Is that
happened.
people we know?
It is people we know, and I think that the invite came through, and they didn't mute
Really?
their stuff, and so we were listening to part of their conversation.
Who was that?
Well, we
That
just
was
let
our
them
friend.
know that whoever was just signing
So it's just
into
in
the
room, somebody had
hangout,
room attendant.
Yes.
that you need to mute yourself so we
Are
can
we still
continue on.
We're
Yes,
still live.
and we're recording. Are we
And yeah,
recording?
we're recording.
And we're recording. So I'm gonna finish the story up that what track one did today was analyze that document, but what happened from there was making the list of what's next based on the information that was in the obit. So if we know they were married and it gave the date of the marriage, now they got to go find that marriage rest.
Absolutely.
And if there's two children, who were the two children?
Yes.
Who was the sisters or whatever, and break it down, each one of them. And we have people coming into the room.
It's basically turned into a big genealogy pajama party.
Hop on the bed.
Hop on the bed.
Watch the computer.
Watch the computer.
I'm just not in my PJs. That's all.
That's all. Come on in.
It's a big party. Come on. I'll slip my behind down.
Okay.
So
we
got to introduce everybody because
go for it.
okay. So we have
Linda, you need to get
come
over
on here.
here.
You see your face.
Say, Linda.
There's Linda. There's Linda. She's poked her head in. I can push the laptop back so that we've got more space.
Okay.
This is
We
so.
do look like sisters.
Wait,
honestly.
we're related. We need to do the DNA.
Yeah.
All right.
Come on in here. Get
Come
on
on
in
here.
here.
True. There's
So
one
there
more
wasn't
person
there.
who's coming. Of
Come on,
course,
get
we
out
have
of bed.
to.
We're live. Where's
We have to
Julie?
get. Roll over here. Roll over
Come
here
on.
next to you.
She can sleep.
She going to bed.
She's going to bed. Okay, so that Linda, she disappeared, and she's gonna reappear.
Come on, bud.
There you go. We're all having a party.
Mama,
Do a
Nika.
screenshot. We gotta print that.
Yeah, we do have to print this out.
So
So
somebody do a screenshot.
we need to do a screenshot out there for us. So basically, normally we all have our heads in little boxes. Maybe we need to do this every time we do this so that it looks like a big party. But the reason why I want to actually kind of go back to what Shelley was talking about was that when you go to a traditional genealogy conference, she mentioned this amazing obituary that this person found in her track, right? You would be dealing with a class in just obituaries, how to find them, what could possibly be in them, but you wouldn't be breaking down the next steps that you would be getting from analyzing that document. That's one of the benefits of being in an interactive institute where you're challenged and you have to do homework. You have to do assignments and different things like that. I think it's actually good that we have Linda here and we've got Yvette here because they're Maggie lifers.
You're lifers.
And
And then
4
True.
years.
Yeah, and then True
True
is her first year.
She's a first timer.
I know, but she was with us for
You're
4
a
years in
lifer.
spirit.
You're a lifer.
She's a lifer.
Yeah, that's what she
Yeah,
I like her.
Now,
So-
she was in the session with the
Obituary.
obituary,
Yes, she was.
and you're in DNA.
She's in DNA track this year. So why do you keep coming back to Maggie?
I come back to Maggie because there's always something to learn. You're meeting new people. And so every time you hear someone talk about their experience, it's always an aha moment for me.
Yeah, that's true.
What about you, Yvette?
Well, I just want to improve on my skills, and every time I come back, I get energized, and I want to just learn more, and I just want to do better, and I would love to be an expert in and find my niche in the field, and I just think that the I call you professors, but the instructors, the instructors, they're awesome and they really know what they're talking about. And every year there's something fresh and new that I learn, even if I've heard it over again.
Right.
But it's just really important to me.
And True, what made you take the big jump?
I'm just excited to be here. I don't know why I always have to say it like that, but I am like getting one-on-one, like all those times that you want to like raise your hand and you're like, oh, I don't know if I should answer it, or you just want to blurt out a question, they're right there to answer it for you. And that's what they're doing. They're giving you that one-on-one and they're helping me just like get proficient now. It's like I'm tying it all up and cleaning it all up in what I'm doing in my work, and I can't wait to get back and just to put it into motion now. And this is just like the first day. I still have 2 more days to do. So look forward to hearing from me, tell you all about my first time experience and what it means to get this institute working. It's vital, it's important. And it's going to take my true roots to another level. So that's
one thing that I will point out, and this is something that we talked about. A reporter came today.
Yes.
And she interviewed me, Bernice, and Shannon, and they were going around taking pictures and stuff. But Bernice pointed out something that was very important. This is the only space we've seen where African American people can talk about DNA from their perspective, not where we are fitting into the DNA mold that is just made for everyone, but it's very specialized to our experience when it comes to genetic genealogy. And we'll offer classes where we'll talk about slaveholders and who could be ancestors or not. It's my phone going off. Goodness gracious.
We're live.
we're live.
I know we're live. Normally we're so discombobulated because we're used to like our own house and like shutting our phones off
In our
and stuff like that.
pajamas.
In our pajamas. You guys can only see like the top of us and everything. But that's to me, I think that's a very sacred space for us because DNA is very personal. I think it's the most personal aspect of genealogy we have right now because it's revealing your parents, you know what I'm saying? It's maybe revealing that they're not who you thought they were, or it's giving you ties to a history you didn't know that you had. And we have to be able to have a safe space to talk about that, especially in light of everything that's currently going on right now. So I was just talking a bit about Maggie. We'll come back to Maggie. But there's a story that I held out on discussing until this hangout.
Okay.
Now, people may have seen an article that was posted, I think it was the New York Times, or actually was featured on Good Morning America, where it was here's the headline: Slave descendant unites with plantation owner for heartwarming dinner 181 years after family, I guess, emancipated from, or whatever it was. And there are these pictures of a descendant of a slaveholder and a slave, and then the descendant of just a slaveholder, and they're standing out in front of the house. Yeah, and then they're at this actual slave quarters, and then they're eating dinner, and they're doing all these things. And so I thought it would be a very good idea for us to have a dialogue about this particular post because in some ways it's gone viral. I saw when the initial person actually posted the images from this sort of meetup. And I felt very conflicted about them. And yes, and I refrained from comment because I wanted to wait to discuss it here. So what emotions did it evoke for you all to see this, if you've seen it?
And you're saying, let's clarify the question. What emotions evoked by seeing the slave master's descendant and then the slave descendant?
Yes.
So you want to know.
But it's not just that because
Correct.
people that have had that relationship have met before, but seeing them at the actual location that this relationship was birthed.
Well, I will make comment last.
Okay, I was about to say that I need to go next to last.
Well, I'll start. I've had an experience 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I was invited by the University of Arkansas, Fort Smith, to be a special guest at the dedication of the Drennan home. My great-great-grandfather, Patrick Drennan, was a slave of John Drennan, founder of the town of Van Buren, Arkansas, the Indian agent to the Cherokee Nation of the Drennan Roll in 1951. My ancestor Patrick was a slave of the Drennan household. Having been able to share the documentation that my ancestor was a slave of the Drennans and shared specifically, this information came out of a Civil War pension file, by the way. And then the information reflecting Patrick's death, when the director of the Drennan home, which is now owned by the university, he went to UT Austin, pulled out the Drennan papers where they're kept, found that it absolutely corresponded with the same date that my great-great-grandmother said that her Patrick died. And so they realized, oh my God, this is a documented descendant of one of Drennan's enslaved people. And again, having grown up with that knowledge, well, not necessarily knowledge that, oh, they were part of the Drennan estate, but having looked at slave records for more than 2 decades, 2.5 decades, I don't necessarily find it, especially now, as you said already, people have had these kinds of meetings. I was there, invited to a dedication when they refurbished the home, and I was representing the enslaved population.
Right.
I sipped the mint julep that was served to me that my ancestor would have served to them. And I definitely took a sip of the mint julep on their behalf. But I was kind of, I'll say kind of numb to the article. Because that sort of article sometimes makes me feel that there is an effort to say, well, it's all in the past now, we're all getting along, we're all singing kumbaya.
What you said?
Okay? And that's the part that, no, not in light of the climate of the day. Right. It's not all hunky-dory and all is forgiven and oh, let's just get along and sing kumbaya. It's something that sometimes when that type of meeting is celebrated and plastered in the press as if it's all fixed now and everything's okay. We know everything is not okay. If you have been not living under a rock for the past 6 days, 7 days, there were 7 people who were alive this time last week who are not alive today. No, we're not there. And so when I really kind of look at that article, I'd say, well, that's nice, and move on. But I'm kind of numb to that article.
Anybody else want to chime in?
I can, if you want me to share my part, I will, or I will wait.
You can come in as the closer.
All right.
I have no problems with reconciliation. I've done it myself with, several descendants of my, European or white ancestors. Do it all the time. Have no problems with it. For me, where the problem was the dining in that house. And it's not about the food for me. It's not about what was served, how it was served. For me, I think about my ancestors who were house slaves and the fact that they may have used china that they were serving, that they had to serve these people with. The decisions were made over the lives of my ancestors at that very table. And I can't see how I could break bread with somebody in that type of environment. Now, going to visit the plantation, seeing the quarters, all that, I'm there. If we're in the living room talking about, and you bring out the family papers and you're like, here, I really want you to see this, there's a manifest or something like that, I'm fine. But the breaking of the bread is what bothered me in the house. And I don't know if it's just my own personal issue, but if I was at that table, I would see my ancestors in their roles during slavery, and it would totally mess me up in my head. And I don't know if I would know how to reconcile that because I know their names, and thinking about people who got sold away and, relationships and things like that. And so the other thing that, and, I pay attention to symbolism and, the image that's plastered on, that they chose for social media or just, to be featured, so when someone shared it, they're standing on the porch and I don't think it was done purposely, but I considered it symbolic because the two men are standing there and the African American man has this big sheet of paper with him. And I don't know what was on it, but I almost felt like, because I'm a researcher, I know that he took his research with him almost as a way to make sure that they knew he was legitimate. Like the DNA wasn't enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, here's my notebook. Why do we have to do that? If you already know, based on a third party testing your spit and my spit. Now, maybe I might be reading into this a little bit more, but for me, it was a challenge that being and eating in the house was, I don't think I would have been able to do that.
Well, I came across a slave narrative recently. The slave was not related to me, but she was a slave of the same owner that held my family and the same given name as well. I would not have wanted to eat there because this lady was a servant in the house. And in this narrative, she talked about what her experience was like being in that house and how one statement she made that she was, she called it the young mistress, which was the slave owner's son's daughter-in-law. They had a baby, and the baby was playing, and she just kind of got chuckled at, the baby was kicking. And the son hauled off and slapped her so hard it knocked her over to, it said she was deaf for a while. So he had to, bust her eardrum.
Wow. Yeah.
I would not want to eat there. I would want whatever information I can get from there. But to eat there knowing she was there and what went on in the house.
Yvette, or
Yeah, I didn't see the article, but I feel like if we're gonna sit down at the table together, that means that I feel like it's like I'm in agreement with it, that everything's okay, but it's not okay.
What you said?
I feel like I would rather, the other representation I would rather see is you serving me, honestly.
Well, I mean, I think based on the photos, it looked like, because, the man that was a slaveholder's descendant, he owned the property now. And so it was their house. They lived there. So it looked like maybe his wife had cooked, and you know what I'm saying? And even for me, that was so challenging to reconcile, because I can't, like, being in the house alone is an emotional experience for anybody that's connected somewhat to their ancestors. You have to numb yourself so that you don't pay attention to it. But the fact that you have to numb yourself, why can't we emote? I mean, not like we're gonna pull a Beyonce Lemonade with a baseball bat and go through there and start hitting everything. But at the same time, it's like I'm like, would I have gotten in there and screamed at the top of my lungs because of the tension that I felt? Or, I don't know. I just had so many questions. And then the picture that they had, it just bothered me. I'm like, why do you feel like you have to legitimize this? You have the oral history, you have your paper trail, and you have DNA. You don't have to bring proof. And I kept hoping that they gave him whatever that piece of paper was. And that the slaveholder and slave, descendant didn't bring his research to legitimize himself. That's what and he would have to answer that question because we weren't there. But I just kept seeing him with this, and I know us. I know how we travel. People are here with binders that they've put together with their research, and they flip and they show everybody and they display. That's what we do. That's why I immediately thought that he brought his research to try to legitimize it.
And if that wasn't true, and they gave him those papers that were in his hand, and it was already legitimized, and they were there and opened the house for him to come in and receive more information, how would you feel?
That would change my mind about that part, but it's still
it's
still the breaking bread.
Yeah, but I'm okay. I'm just saying that question because the article didn't address that. And so, go ahead.
I would have had this overwhelming
Yeah,
feeling
speak up.
of just grieving over the spot. I would have to be there morning first before I could get to that point. And I don't know if that happened, but I know that would happen for me because I've done it many times in many places for my ancestors. It's that grieving that morning that you have to go through, and that was skipped over. And I think that other image just bothered me too, where they're just walking the land with wine glasses, like it was some type of, I don't know, that didn't sit with me.
It's making an uncomfortable situation lighter, but it's a thin cover. It's not even something that's really.
But you realize this is what we're feeling.
Yes, yeah, that's correct. Also, there's no guidebook on how to do it. There's no guidebook for the slaveholder descendants. What do you do when the descendants of one of the family slaves
And you
comes
go
to the
through,
house?
don't serve wine.
Don't
You know,
serve-
like point B,
Definitely
don't serve
serve
wine.
wine.
This was another reason
There
why
is no-
coming to the table is trying to be able to hear that voice from the descendants. And then you got the slaveholder descendants trying to be able to understand, but they're also feeling it, but they're also sharing the information. And I don't hear them breaking bread, but they're at the same table.
We can go
Talking
eat
about
all
it.
day. We can
But I'll
go
share
every
mine.
afternoon. We can go to every, but not there. There is, that's
It
just.
is sacred.
It's just, it's like, it's to me, it's like having filet mignon on the headstone of my dead slave ancestor. That's what I felt like. It was like me, you know, having a 5-course deluxe gourmet meal.
Where tragedy happened.
Yes, at a battle site.
Yeah.
You know, who goes to Gettysburg and has a picnic
on the battleground.
on the battleground?
It's hallowed ground.
Okay, you had a comment.
I was just gonna say, I would have liked to visit every room in that house because I want to see where they walked, where I just want to,
and I've had that.
and I want to go back and try to put myself in the place. What could they have been feeling during the time they worked there or was there?
I think that's really a point, and again, this is one of those kind of funny, this is one of those unpublished things that needs to be published, although I don't know what to call it. But I walked through the Drennan home. I was given a tour of the Drennan home, even before it was dedicated, when they were still refurbishing it. And then at the dedication, I took the whole tour and all that. But what is significant about the Drennan home, it is the oldest home in the state of Arkansas that has been continually occupied by the same family. It is not a mansion, it's a simple home. He lived on the top of Drennan Reserve, where he had his 100+ acres. And of course, his farmlands were down below where the slaves worked. And my ancestors worked in the house because it's been continually occupied until they sold it a few years ago to the university. Of course, all remnants of the slave cabins are gone. They're somewhere on the grounds in the thicket somewhere. Not maybe the foundation, the cabins and everything are gone. But my first question was, where were the cabins? Because I visited it. I've been on the grounds of Drennan Reserve 3 times. Once I went with a good friend who took me up the hill, and the professor at the university was there. And he was there the second time. But the first time I was there, I went out to the lawn, to the area, the grassy green area. I was just listening to the quiet, trying to hear the whispers of the ancestors, so to speak. And then I was kind of snapped into reality as I was just looking and listening and wondered, did they walk down this little path? Did they go there? And suddenly my friend, who was white, in fact, I saw her look down behind me and says, "Come this way right now." And she pulled me back. A copperhead had coiled and was about to strike. And
you didn't see it.
I didn't see it either, because I'm just standing there looking. And so she pulled me out of the way. And by the time I saw it, he had actually snapped, but he missed his mark, me. And then he was there trying to get himself kind of back together. And I thought about it, and she was like, "Oh my God." And I'm thinking, I need to leave this
It's
place.
time to go.
I need to leave. Not just
They
because
told
it's a
you to
snake on
go.
the ground.
You got to go.
But this was a sign to me that I can come back another time under a different circumstance. And I did. The second time I went, a descendant of the slaveholder was there to meet me. Nervous wreck. She was very, very concerned and nervous, and I guess thought I was going to ask for keys to the house, which I didn't. But it was very interesting because there was clear discomfort on her part. I only wanted to know where were the quarters, where were the slave quarters, because they don't exist anymore. And they're still excavating the land and some of the grounds. And so it's very, very interesting. But no, I always felt that I was walking on sacred ground because my ancestors walked there.
You know, I want to make a response to that. I feel strongly about, you know, the spiritual aspect
Yes.
of it, and I feel
Precisely.
like when we go somewhere like a place like that we should pour libations to our ancestors
Yes.
and you know, I mean, and say some prayers for
Yes,
them.
absolutely.
You know, and maybe somehow
And that's why I
releasing
was
them.
doing it when I was sort of quiet near the edge. And there was like a little, not a brook or a stream, but just something where I was standing near the rocks and was having my moment. And thankfully, she saw my copperhead before he actually, you know, got to me, and she pulled me out the way. And I actually felt that, you know, I'm having this moment with them, and here was something very evil that could have killed me. A copperhead is very venomous. And wow, you know, and I have been back twice, but I still felt that there was maybe some presence of something
absolutely.
oppressive
Right,
there.
right.
And maybe I'm reading that too much into that statement.
No,
But I don't think I am.
And,
I don't
and
think
that's
that I
why I wanted to wait till last
Okay.
and to link all of this up. And a few weeks ago, and you know, the ones on Facebook would have seen this, but there was a group of us that went to Harewood Plantation. Harewood is Samuel Walter Washington, brother of George Washington, plantation in Charlestown, West Virginia. And there's 2 other plantations, and they're all still in the Washington family. And so the owner, who is a Washington, my first male white Washington I have ever met in my life. And I had never met, and I was so impressed. Well, there is a cousin, Sarah Brown, who's out in Austin, and she connected, and we're on Facebook, and then we all have connected with other people that all have descendants and slave connections to the Washington family. I missed the first luncheon, but what I'm sharing with you is what was at the first luncheon, because Walter, who owns the house in the descendant, is the only one there, and he lives in the side, which was an addition. The rest of the house is as it was back in those days. Matter of fact, one room has never been painted. The pictures have not moved, and the things on the furniture, the tables are still there as it was. In that room, you walk in there, and those of us that do have that, I don't know what you want to call it, but you know you were there and they were there. So we all brought food. Everybody brought something. And folks that hadn't connected, that weren't at the first lunch, was there at the second. And I'm going to get emotional in a minute. But the one, Joyce Ann, who is a distant relative of mine, and she has a blog, and she wrote about this, her sitting at the table, and Walter and other people, but she's at the head of the table. And of course, I sit at the table the second time. But she was there, and all this emotion was welling up. And she did this thing. She's sitting there thinking, and she's, you know, and she's writing this in a blog that she's sitting at the table being served where they served. But But the bigger thing was that furniture and everything that was there, and she's sitting at the table, was still there. And here I come in the second time, so I'm reading their blog. They're calling, I'm reading the blog. I tear up on it because I'm feeling that she's saying, and she couldn't say anything. And the thing of it wasn't a being served. In the second one, we're all bringing food. Everybody's got food. We got kids running around. Walter's playing with the younger kids with games. He's down on the floor. And these kids, Joyce Ann's 12-year-old granddaughter was there the first time. The 12-year-old, now it's 6-7 months later, she's telling who's in the pictures on the wall.
Wow.
And all the pictures are there as they were. The kitchen has a big, huge hearth in it. Ain't been touched. Even though you got a real stove over here, but that was the hearth that slave, and right off of the kitchen was where the slave or the cook slave slept, which the lady from Austin, is Sarah, was sleeping in that room. Sarah comes up. Sarah's mission was to help these descendants get access to all these records.
Oh,
We got access. We got the records. Where are you guys? We want to share this. So they have opened this up. And my family's in the neighborhood, and they're the free people in the neighborhood. And my one Washington, I haven't connected into the Washingtons, but it's not too far to say that they're right there, and it's Washington. All of the Washington property is still owned and in the family of the Washingtons. And of course, I'm not talking about Mount Vernon. I'm talking about Charlestown, because Samuel, or one of the brothers of George, was sent there to survey in the whole 9 yards. And the other piece was the fact we're all sitting out on the porch. And I did video, other people did video. And this is the beautiful thing that I wanted to share, even though the emotion was there. And I don't have a blood tie yet, but I'm going to tell you what, them ancestors was there. And it was being nudged. You were being whispered to. And every room you moved into, something was happening in there. But we're on the porch, and it's a beautiful grounds. And again, it's an old house, the high ceilings and stuff. And it's probably about, for some reason, I want to say X amount, 1,000 acres, or no, 1,000 acres or something that's still there, or something, and some, there's sheep on there. But the fact of what I didn't hear, and I don't know, because they were welcoming and not asking to prove anything. They've got the stuff to give you so you can prove it. So it was a complete opposite.
so
But
they gave you your people, so to speak.
yes, and the folks that were there the first time got to know about where things were on the property. But what I didn't get to ask is what I'm sorry about, and I'm going back anytime, is where's the cemetery? I want to know where the cemetery is at. And is there records of the cemetery? They've got all the other records, just like the connection with Gary and Renata.
Yes,
Betsy
yes.
down there in North
That
Carolina
was a mighty
had all the
story.
records, and it's almost, it's not about the breaking the bread, because all of us shared in that, and all we did was talk. We questioned and we talked. They shared what they knew. You know what I'm saying? But we were there at a chance, and their thing was, you have a chance, come, because the house is not open to the public except maybe once a year. He don't let anybody come. I mean, that's his house.
Yeah.
He lives there. But the fact of it is, they're willing to share that documentation to help us do that. And I'm not saying those that these
I
good
know,
white
I
people
know,
are not
I
bad.
know,
That's
I
not
know,
my
but
point.
but yeah.
I'm saying it's the exact, the folks that were there didn't get your feelings because they're learning, and it's what they didn't know and they're finding out. They know that people were enslaved there. And again, these connections in that door swinging open, help them, for them to get validated and say, yes, that's my ancestor. And here's their story.
Well, I think in light of the conversations that we're having right now, I think the danger of, because positive things are happening with your experience, with this, what was written about this man. Of course, you can bring in negatives, but my question is this: like, we have organizations like Coming to the Table who are trying to facilitate dialogue, do things like that. There is no one size fit all for this.
No.
And that's the thing that bothers me about this, is that, all of us are going to have our own journeys reconciling about slavery and how it affected our families. And I don't think it's fair to, you're going to extend goodwill to people, but everybody is not going to react the same.
Absolutely.
And I think when these pieces get published, it makes it look as though all of us are going to react this way, or we're going to be
but let me ask you a
grateful, or,
question. The issue is we are not publishing those stories, and they're being told by somebody else. And I think that's something that I want to appeal to my fellow African Americans who have slave ancestors. You need to be telling that story. You need to be writing that story. And then you're sharing that story from your perspective. And I think that makes a completely different story that's more that you can feel it.
I think it's a valid point, but at the same time, though, we can't feel as though we aren't allowed to emote in the ways that we need to emote in those spaces.
I agree.
Now, that doesn't mean that, like I said, you don't go full Lemonade Beyonce with a baseball bat.
Right.
No, but, we had a conversation about this at dinner, because we were talking about just the climate of what's going on in this country. We would be remiss if we didn't have a discussion about how genealogy and family history relates to what's going on right now. And one of the things that I said to Linda and to True and to Yvette was that I felt like in some ways we're regressing. I know I've been involved in conversations where we're talking about race issues, and because people of another race are around, we whisper when we use the word white or black, or, it's like, well, that we drop our voices. Now, that's not saying that you're being rude or whatever. You're just addressing whatever the situation is. Why do I have to whisper behind that? Why is it not okay for us to emote, have emotions, have feelings, be human? That's my point. And that's what bothers me so much about this is, and that's the thing, I probably would have been completely engaged that day when you were there, but this would all be running through my mind.
And the thing of it is, that's why you got to write and tell that story. Or you got to tell that experience and what you're feeling. Or ask that question.
Why can't we emote?
Why can't we? And the reason is the country has never, white America has never come to terms with it, number one. It's clearly not passed down as a slaveholder, because now you're finding people that could assume their ancestors might have just because of location or geographical type things. But again, I need us to be out there telling the story. And even if it has to be, because again, we got the stories that came down oral history the same way, but they're different than what someone else might have had. And it might be what evidence and records that we're finding. But I would like to see, instead of a newspaper reporter writing and taking pictures and glorifying standing on the steps just as the image that you see, to say, and that's why I call out Joyce Ann's blog, because she went through that. She was extremely thankful. We love these people because they're helping research what they're missing. And they've got the pieces that's connecting that puzzle, and they're okay sharing the information. Now think about Mr. Ball in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Think about what he went through when he started telling that. Actually, when he told that story, his family went into, some of them went into a rage. Well, you got the rage now, and it's almost not the same, but you know what I'm saying? What's coming
Yeah,
out. You got
yeah.
to tell this story about your family being enslaved and not necessarily.
I mean, I'm telling the story. But
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but the other
But
thing
that
though,
emotional part that's
well,
there.
I mean, and we actually alluded to this too before we started recording. The whole idea that we're just supposed to forget about slavery at some point.
We
Get
ain't
over
even
it.
really started
Get
talking
over
about
it.
We
Why do I
about
still-
slavery when they forget that they lost the war? And the
But-
South has not gotten over losing the
They,
war,
no.
which is why they're still waving their flag.
I live in Virginia.
I live in
A flag
Tennessee.
that was valid for 4 years.
The capital of the Confederate
They call
Army
it
is
that.
Oh,
down
and
the
I
road.
live not far from where Fort Pillow.
There you go.
Ah,
The
There
Fort
you
Pillow
go.
massacre
I'm down the
happened.
road from Monticello, and they're rebuilding the slave quarters at
Yes, they
Monticello.
are.
So,
Mulberry
and they need
Road.
Mulberry Road. They need to be able to show that story. We're seekers. We are seekers. We're getting answers, but we got to tell that story.
So how do you feel, or what ways do you feel as though genealogy can help stimulate the dialogue about race in this country? Because one of the terms that I've been using as of late is we need to challenge the comfort of closed eyes. People are woefully remaining blind when it's obvious in front of their faces what is happening. And so as family historians, as people who are interested in history, maintaining a record, making sure it's accurate, what are things that our community can do, especially when it relates to African Americans? Because, I'm thinking about the kids that I see on a regular basis, the high schoolers that I see. And the fact that, yesterday my husband had to walk into meetings with a predominantly African American high school team, and his kids were on off week when all these people were killed. And they're seeing these deaths replayed over and over and over and over and over again. And the rage that builds up because of a number of different issues. I'm thinking about young people and how as adults we're having these conversations, and a lot of us are neglecting the young people that are in our lives and to engage them about what's happening right now. A lot of us are doing it. We're thinking, oh, they don't care. They're into their phone. No, they're watching all of this.
They're hearing it.
They're hearing it. They're watching it. They're looking at our response.
And they're probably
How do we-
talking about it.
And I know they're talking about it.
And what broke my heart, and one of the killings that you're talking about, is the 4-year-old sitting
Absolutely.
in that car. That
All right,
just
Mom.
it's gonna be all right, mommy.
The innocence of the child.
The innocence of a child, but I have to commend that mother,
Yes.
because what she witnessed, what she was feeling, and I've fallen apart hearing that voice, and she's talking, and I don't know how you can do that. And I had to turn the TV off, and I made one post on Facebook and said, I'm not going to say anything else. And the thing of it is so much is coming at us with the media and stuff that sometimes we got to take a break from this.
Absolutely.
Because it makes that anger,
It's
unhealthy. It's
It is-
very
it is
unhealthy. But how do you work through?
That's what I was
coming
gonna
back?
say. How do you work
that?
through what we have a very niche community, right? We do. Very specialized, very focused.
Yes.
When people are having these discussions about race, they're bringing up history, ancestry. When people are making, or talking from on high, making these statements about our children being felons and things like that, they're talking about, you come from a bunch of animals, or you come from a bunch of felons. You come from a long line of that. That's what you people do as a group. How can we, as family historians and genealogists, help to stimulate dialogue? What parts of what we do can we add to that? Take for instance, we're doing family history research. I discover through this process that I'm related to Philando Castile. He's not a blood relative of mine, but we share a first cousin. And the whole time I'm watching that video, I'm thinking that it could be, because it's in Minnesota and it's in St. Paul, that could be a number of my relatives that live there. I'm seeing their
Anywhere in
faces
USA.
and him,
Yeah.
not knowing that he is related to me. I had no clue until 2 days later. And what I did when I saw some of the news reporting that happened, because these are sources we're using. We're using newspapers, we're using those outlets. When I saw the Daily Mail report that he got arrested 31 times, I said, let me check to see if this is right. Let me pull his record up, because I know where the public records are in Minnesota.
Number one, you just keyed on, validate the information that you're hearing, right there. Research it, validate it, the source, where is it coming from?
Well, and I mean,
you do that in your research.
You do that in your research, and one of the things, I mean, I almost feel like we should treat some of these incidences like we treat what we see on some of these genealogy shows, where they touch on one issue and not enough, and then we expand upon it, like Ardella Vance or George Stinney,
Yes.
where we're unearthing all the layers of the story versus, okay, this is just the soundbite that we need for this next 15 minutes or this next 24-hour news cycle. And so I just bring that up because, like I said, his arrest record, or it wasn't even an arrest record. It was 31 times he was stopped by the police in 14 years.
Yes.
Which could be harassment.
Exactly. Same
My
counties.
nephew was stopped 3 times in 1 week.
Yes. But the fact of the matter is, when you're looking at that, when
You know?
people see the visual, it's different
Yeah.
when someone reports it in a story and they don't link to it. I put images in the comments so people could see all 3 pages
Yes.
for themselves, broke it down. Why is it important? I look to see, okay, because I know about Ferguson, reading about the ticketing that happens in that environment, and the fact that a lot of those communities are dependent on that revenue from traffic stops to fund their city government. Let me look into St. Paul, Ramsey County. Did they require a budget increase this year? Where does their revenue come from? Right? We have the skills to research these things and to pull them out for people that we know, because a lot of folks aren't doing the research. So I'm just using that as one example of a way that we can use our skills. That's one of the ways that we could use our skills to help change and challenge the dialogue. And I think as far as when historical stuff comes up, I think when historical stuff comes up, that's where we come in and challenge the narrative, because you look in these comment sections and it's like Irish slaves, the fact that gets
Okay.
pulled out of people's behinds. That watch a lot of ego stroking news. That's what I call it.
It's also important too, and Judy talked about it this evening, is losing that oral history in 3 generations.
That's right.
So you have to tell it, but we have a story to tell. We're working on our ancestors, but we're going forward. So we have to have those conversations with our children and family members today as to what's going on. Talk about it.
And I think the importance is the fact is that, and I'm gonna call it digging for your roots. Here, we're doing the research, we're gathering the evidence to share what's actually factual. We're telling the stories of what comes down the line, but we're still gathering and questioning what is on those documents. Because not only if we just get a document and as a researcher you get it, okay, I got the death certificate. Yay, I'm done. Wait a minute, I think you're just getting started. Because what all happened around that, who's connected, who's the descendants, who's the white, who's the kids, who's the siblings. But my point is that you're researching for evidence to be able to share the right story.
I was about to say, to me, I think we have a huge opportunity
It's a
to give humanity back to some of these folks that have been victimized.
Absolutely.
By removing the media narrative and making connections like Alton Sterling and Philando Castile could have been related.
Yes.
Why? Because of the Great Migration and the fact that several thousands of people left the Baton Rouge area and moved to places like Minnesota. And the fact that they were leaving behind, they thought they were leaving behind this type of brutality when they got there.
But we have to remember, not only did we migrate, they did too.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
They migrated
Absolutely.
for the same reason.
The boll weevil affected them as well
Yes.
as us.
Exactly.
Cairo, Illinois.
Yes.
The way people were treated in the 60s and the 50s in Cairo, Illinois. The same Southern folks who moved up, white, who also moved up, who were Black. And no, you're not going to cross this line and come into Cairo. We have bricks and we're ready to kill you. And yeah, it's
But our-
something.
So I'm gonna
It's
throw
too
out
much.
a question. Are we seeing, and we've had a conversation, another incident on here, are we seeing a repeat? Because you know, everybody got that comment about history repeating itself.
Because we
And
didn't
you
learn
think
from it.
about, well, we haven't learned, but some things are the same thing and it's dressed up
continuing.
different.
It
That's what
never
I'm saying, it
stops.
never
We
stops.
just have cameras now.
And it's being,
Everybody now has
what's
cameras.
Gil
That's
out
all.
here and
The
saying?
big revolution.
Will not be
but it is
televised.
being
But
televised.
No,
because of
the
the
truth is
21st,
being televised.
it is,
It's being
it is.
reported,
Because there was killings happening
but
in the community, but now we're seeing it where people were discarding it because there was Black males being arrested, accosted, and beaten and murdered. But now, white America is seeing just as
the
much.
world is seeing.
In the
We've
world,
always said.
absolutely.
One of the things I said last week in my podcast,
Mhm.
this is not new.
No,
We are
it's not.
celebrating in the genealogy community. We got the Freedmen's Bureau Records Index. Isn't that nice? And everybody's gonna go look for their grandpa and quit. But I said, go pull up that same community and read the letters,
And find out.
read the outrages. And some of those outrages are so horrific.
Yeah, they are.
This is before the 20th century. We're talking the first days of freedom.
Yes.
And you see what happened? This is not new. It's always happened. And the point is simply that now we have a toy, a new bit of technology that everybody see it. It's not buried in the Bureau of Records, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands.
But I
It's
think
now
there's more
on
records
YouTube.
that we tapped into.
It's, anyway, I'm out. I've got
Okay.
to
Yeah,
No,
no, I think there's
depressing
more
too.
to be done.
It's too much.
And I think just with who's in the room, we're on that path. We're on that path and we're being guided. And even because we're here because of an institute and the teaching aspect that we were talking about, because we want more, so we can tell and share more. And so I think it's the perfect way to learn and enhance your skills. Because people aren't coming here totally brand new. We're looking for things to help us get there, but there's also connections being made while they're here. And that's another amazing fact, is that people are connected that didn't know they were connected. So it's almost like, keep going. We got to do more. Keep sharing
Yes.
and use the media to your benefit to get out what you're trying to
With
tell.
technology.
And if you feel that experience, which I felt the experience in the rage of what she was saying, but I was sitting here, why? Why are they on the step? Wait, what's that in his hand? So I went through that
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, and
I didn't take it to say, did he have to take stuff to prove who he was? I thought, I took it as they gave him something to take away. And we don't know. And that's where we as researchers, we can say and show in our blogs and talks or whatever it is, the fact that we got to evidence that, and here we go, true, that we see the one woman was $57.50 was her value. Where the hell did 50 cents come from, and what does
Right.
that mean about the human? $57.50.
Well,
And had to go quiet on that. I mean, because it was like, what? I don't understand.
I still think we're kind of not. I think we're touching on
Mhm.
things, but I don't think we're really, really touching on it because, the average person possibly may think, well, genealogy doesn't have anything to do with this. No, we have a huge opportunity here, I think, that we could be potentially missing, that we're not strategizing behind, because I don't want too many of us to get so caught up in researching our own ancestors that we forget about the opportunity that we have to educate our people when we're trying to edify ourselves and build ourselves up. You get self-identity, you get positive self-identity, you get so many positive things from learning about your lineage and where you come from. And our people are like, no, we're not going to be victimized. Our humanity is not going to be stripped from us. And that's a perfect opportunity for us to build them up with knowledge of themselves through their family history. So we may not be able to answer that question tonight, but I definitely challenge the people in the room and those who are listening to this to seriously consider what you as a genealogy researcher or a family historian can add to this dialogue and how you can change the trajectory of things. Because what will end up happening is everyone will be excited about an index, but the next time somebody is killed, it's like,
It's
you
on
know,
the back burner.
it's put on the back burner.
But
Yeah.
the history and the genealogy is time to all this going on today.
Yeah, what's going on today in history are definitely intertwined.
And
So
if we don't learn from it, it's going to continue to repeat itself.
And one of the things is you're not just researching as a genealogist. You're not just researching that ancestor. You're researching that whole community.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
You got to know what
That's right.
happened, what
That's true.
laws were in place at the time to be able to factually tell that story. So it's impacted everything you're doing. You can't look just at the house where your people were at. Who were the neighbors? Who were down the street? Who were around the corner? Because you know what? Auntie was over there. Grandma was down here. Everything is connected. And to factually and provide that evidence, you got to look at the whole community. Somebody gets shot in the community, it's a ripple effect.
absolutely.
And the emotions are rippling. Because as somebody, you see your child, my son is 44 years old. I can't put my hands on him, he's too far away. But I made a post. You need to grab your sons, your nephews, your husbands, your brothers, and hold on. We don't know where this is going. And I'm not trying to put fear out here, but be scared.
Yeah.
And be able to hold on. People need to know where their children are at. You need to know what's going on in your community to be able to understand what you have to do. And us as researchers, I'm gonna put it out there. We got to step up to the line.
That's my point.
And
That's the point that I'm making.
keep doing this research, keep getting better at it. But even more than that is to make sure you're telling the people in your house and the rest of your family. And Linda had alluded to that earlier, because now it is our responsibility, because we've become those that are the historians of the family, or we're the ones that's doing the research, or call it a griot. And to tell that story. I know I ain't got, it's late, dear. It's late. I done taught 3 classes today.
Okay.
But you know what I'm saying?
No, I know what you're saying.
It comes honest because nobody's gonna know.
Well, and that's the point I'm making, is when these stories come out, because I've yet to see a news story report on some of these instances, and there were a number of brown people killed the same week that the media didn't even really touch, outside of regional media, didn't even touch. What I'm saying is, none of these stories, very few of them, have actually brought up where the reporters have done their due diligence and looked at the crime and the incidences that have taken place before this incident, looked at the history. Like, there was one young man that was killed in Fresno, and there's an independent woman who's been doing research, keeping her own database on police deaths, because the police department does not do it.
Right.
And there was the officer that was implicated in that, from what I understand, he's already killed 5 people. So that's what I'm saying, that I
And
feel
why
like there's
is he still walking around?
why can't we be Erin Brockovich?
Right.
What's wrong? She wasn't a lawyer. She wasn't this, you know what I'm saying? She was a citizen who was concerned about her community. Why can't we operate in that role whenever these things are? Unearth the Great Migration. Talk about sundown towns and what that means. Why can't we utilize our space and our voice to educate? Because there's a group of people that are in our circle, or that operate in this genealogy world, who are justifying these deaths because they don't see the humanity in the people. And this is one way.
But are we getting too much in front of us? That we're becoming numb at what we're seeing?
I think for some folks are getting desensitized.
And yeah. And so where do we go from here, Miss Nika?
Miss Angela's going to bed, but
lay down.
all I'm saying is I feel like if you're a researcher and you spend the time doing your family history research, regardless of your race, and these incidences come up, don't just take the incidents at face value, at just Alton Sterling getting shot in front of the market, or Philando dying in the car. What led to that? What redlining policies? What white flight? What lack of budgetary constraints or over, I mean, the fact that they were hiring 2 sheriff's departments employees and probation officers, that was why the budget got increased in St. Paul. Why was there a need for that? Have you already invested in other areas of your county to ensure that you don't need those probation officers? Or was it just short-sighted, we just need more people? Because the average person is not going to vote to get those jobs because they don't want the infrastructure to look like it's collapsing around them. So, like I said, I know I can't be the only person asking these questions because I critically think about all the pieces of our research. So I think, like I said, I think we have a unique opportunity to really kind of just add some flesh on the bones for some of these things. So with that said, the next hangout is on Tuesday, August 2nd. And we are going to be talking about Alabama and Georgia genealogy.
Awesome.
Right.
That means True Lewis
Alabama
is on tap to discuss. And I want to say Jiz and James.
James is in Alabama.
I was going to say James is Alabama and Georgia. Tweet us. Hashtag BlackProGen. Let us know you're watching. Questions, feedback that you have about what you've seen tonight. Whether or not you think Miss Angela's going to fall asleep like right behind us or not.
Renata's
That's
trying to
why
sign in right now.
Yeah,
I told her
screen.
we're wrapping up.
We're wrapping up.
Yeah,
Next time you see us, it's not going to be 6 heads in one box. We'll be separated. But for those who joined us, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We talked about Maggie briefly. There's so much available online. Follow the tweets and everything that people are sending out, postings that people are putting out. I've been using Maggie16 and Maggie as a hashtag.
Maggie 2016 on Twitter. And you have questions, also those of you who are sharing pictures on Facebook or on Twitter, hashtag Maggie 2016.
And if you want to follow the Maggie feed, it's at Maggie Institute on Twitter. So, all right, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye from Fort Wayne.